Hi everyone, my name's Rob with FeedbackWhiz. I'm Chief Marketing Officer, and today I have a really special guest who came all the way from Florida to meet with us. He's not only an Amazon seller, but he's also an attorney, and he's going to have a very interesting perspective of not only selling on Amazon, but some of the difficulties that you deal with legally on Amazon. Exactly. So please put your hands together and welcome Jeff Schick.
All right. Thank you everyone for having me. Like Rob said, I've been selling on Amazon for 8 years. It was actually how I paid for law school and part of college. So it was started off small back in 2011 when it was the Wild West days of Amazon. Then grew to over 7 figures as I learned, and so it's been a unique path because I always went into like law school classes looking for things that I saw as being problems on Amazon because I want to be able to solve it legally. So from hijacking to corporate formalities, like all the courses I got to take, had some Amazon focus. So it's been a unique path. Even took like a class that a lot of people and like my friends in law school were like, why are you taking fashion law? You are like the most unfashion forward person we know. And I was
Can't
like,
you tell? We're just dying with fashion up here.
And I was like, because people on Amazon have to deal with retail, they have to deal with imports, they have to deal with, foreign currency, all these things that, you wouldn't think about that a fashion company has to deal with. And so that was actually taught by the chief legal officer of Michael Kors. So it was actually a pretty unique course of real world, how a big, global fashion brand handles its both e-commerce and bricks and mortar retail. So that ended up being probably my most valuable course I took in law school. So without further ado, I guess let's get started.
Yeah. So that's a great introduction. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for coming out again.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's start with, first of all, let's do a show of hands. How many people in the room have been selling on Amazon under a year or are going to start or haven't started selling on Amazon? Does that make sense? Raise your hands. So quite a few. Okay, so, and then how many have been selling on Amazon over a year? So a little bit smaller. Okay, all right. So why don't we start with that, and the reason I ask is because that way we can kind of shape this to fit most of the room. And then of course, the more advanced sellers at the end, if you have advanced questions, we'd be happy to ask. You can ask them and Jeff will be happy to answer them. So, yeah. But why don't we go over like getting started on Amazon? Like what's some things to watch out for, or maybe some tips and advice before you get started or as you're getting started?
So the first piece of advice I'd say is to approach Amazon as a business, because you're launching into a global marketplace. When you start selling on Amazon, you'll have customers from all over the United States. I've sold to people in all 50 states, and then even through Amazon Global Export, I have orders that get sent to China, to Hong Kong, to the United Kingdom. And this is not through Amazon's, global selling program, which is totally different. This is just where Amazon actually ships your orders internationally for you, and it's called Global Export. And if you don't have your account enabled for FBA Global Export, you're missing out on sales opportunities. So I would recommend checking for it. But it's but the point of why I'm saying this is because you have to make sure your products comply with the laws in not only the United States, but also think of possibly abroad. Especially make sure your products are compliant.
Jeff, I'm going to stop you. So let's back up a little.
Yeah.
What about if I just grab a product and I start selling on Amazon? I haven't done anything. I'm sitting in my house one day and I'm like, you know what? I got this idea. I'm on Alibaba, pick up a product. I'm going to start selling on Amazon. Is that a good idea to just start doing that?
It really depends.
Okay. So, should I have something to protect me legally?
Legally, you should definitely, like if you're going to take this serious, like if you're looking, you think you're going to make money on it, you're going to want to start thinking about asset protection. So that means reaching out, and so like that's what I was going to say. When you start out a business, like if you like think about a bricks and mortar store down the street. If someone's opening an ice cream shop, they're going to have a lawyer and they're going to have an accountant or a CPA on their team. Not necessarily full time, but they're going to have those lined up before they start selling. And that's why I always recommend it's like I approach business that way because that's how I approached it. I had a lawyer before I became one that helped me with everything. I had an accountant that I've worked with for years. And the reason for that is because I'm building a legit, business. Yeah. And if I approach it as a hobby, then I'm exposing myself personally to getting, the courts are going to view it as a business. So you need to approach it as a business. So like going to your question, what should you have? you definitely need some sort of asset structure. Now, it's unique for everyone's situation, whether you'd have an LLC or a corporation. You know, y'all are all here in California. So the biggest issue that a lot of non-California sellers have to deal with is California's fees. Unfortunately, y'all have to deal with it either way. So sometimes, like I've seen on some of the guru sites, and that's, first off, I have to say, like, gurus are not the place to get information. They're not where you go for legal advice. Just because somebody has a Lamborghini doesn't mean that they're qualified to tell you anything about Amazon.
Maybe a Lamborghini, how to buy one.
Maybe they know how to buy a Lamborghini and negotiate a good price on that, but that's about it. You know, or lease one. I don't know how that goes. But it's so, for instance, like if they're telling you, oh, you should be form an LLC in Wyoming. The first question I always say when you see somebody referring something that specific is why. And they're probably giving you an affiliate link that gives them a commission when you form that LLC in Wyoming. And here's the bad news for people in California. When you form that LLC in Wyoming, you're going to pay several $100s in Wyoming LLC formation charges, and then you're going to pay $1,700 to the California Franchise Tax Board when you come back and register it in California. Yeah. So now you spent roughly $2,000 to $2,500 for a Wyoming LLC that's formed in both, that's formed in Wyoming and foreign qualified in California, when if you would have gotten competent legal advice, they would have probably told you just form it either in Nevada or you'd form it in California. Depends on your situation. And so that's the first step, is to know your experts and know what people are, why they're suggesting something. So watch out for that, because it's a trap. Same thing goes with software. Like, just because somebody puts software in front of you and it's free and it's got a great free trial, don't necessarily just click the I accept, give them MWS access, because you're giving them access to all of your sales history and all of your product information. So, for me,
except FeedbackWhiz, we are partnered with Amazon,
right?
So all your information is protected.
So they're in the App Store,
yes.
And that means that Amazon has vetted their practices. They know that they're following Amazon Code of Ethics, and so that means that you can trust companies that are within that App Store. Whereas somebody who's not in the App Store, they might be just going out there because they want to collect data. And so you need to think, like maybe they're giving 6 months free. Why are they giving 6 months free? It's because if they can get 6 months of your data, they know exactly what products they're selling, how much they're selling for. I mean, it's
you got to
really
be careful.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like some advice you're giving is if you're going to start a business, probably want to get an LLC or a corporation to protect yourself. Just to make sure that you kind of have some, obviously go talk to a lawyer or somebody who can advise you of what to do prior to starting that business. If you think it's a hobby, you never know though. I mean, we've seen people get on Amazon with one product and make, millions of dollars. So, I mean, that can happen, right. But you just want to be careful.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's great advice. So
I mean, even like the LLC is like such a basic thing to have some sort of asset protection vehicle, LLC, corporation, whatever is set up. When I was in law school, I actually got an interesting case. I had a customer reach out to me, and it was a plugin sort of similar to a Glade plugin, and they reached out with a picture through buyer-seller messaging, and they said, I plugged this in, and it was a really nice lady. She was from the Deep South, so they're not very litigious. It wasn't, New York or California. Sorry. So she reached out. She was really sweet about it, but she goes, I plugged this in and it caught on fire in my house. And it really messed up the outlet, and it messed up my, this whole product. And when I reached out to Amazon, they wouldn't give me a refund because I was on day 32 of the return policy. She's like, how can you fix this so that I don't leave a 1-star review and be upset with you? And I was like, I gave her a full refund and a product replacement. So not only did she give a 5-star review, but she also never sued me, which was a really good.
That's nice of her.
The really important thing.
Thanks for not suing me.
Yeah. So when you're selling products, especially anything that goes on people, into people, electronics, anything that's high risk, you've got to make sure you've got insurance. Amazon requires a $1 million policy. If you don't have it already, there's an insurance broker that specializes in e-commerce. Her name's Ashlyn Haddon. I'd reach out to her because she can give you really, competitive rates in all 50 states. So make sure you talk to someone that knows what they're doing. I've seen some regular insurance brokers, like they can write the policies, but then they don't quite understand the risk that Amazon entails. And so you might end up paying more because you're paying for like the same coverage that Amazon would take out versus someone that understands what a seller is. So,
so we may have jumped ahead a little bit. So I want to back up just a smidge. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what got you into Amazon? Like, how did you get into it, and what road did you take to get to that venture of being in Amazon and then eventually into being an attorney?
So I was in college. I was buying textbooks one day, and I was there's like this little banner that popped up on the login screen that was like, "Have you ever dreamed of selling on Amazon?" And like back in high school,
don't click on it.
I'd owned an online.
Don't install it.
So like back in high school, I'd started an online store, and then my manufacturer went out of business because of the recession. So it was kind of like that was my first taste of e-commerce. And so then like that was over. I went to college, and everything was normal. And then that Amazon ad popped up, and they're like, "We'll give you 6 months free where we won't charge you the $40 a month." I was like, okay, I'll see what happens here. So I did that, and this was before FBA. And so it was like I started selling it merchant fulfilled, and it was like an order here and there. And then FBA came out, and I was like, and I started trying new products in there. And then the manufacturer, one of the primary manufacturers I was selling at the time, reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, we see what you're doing. We knew about your online store when you were a kid," because it was a family friend, and they were like, go for it, like sell the hell out of it, see what happens. And so I tried to sell their product, and it took off with FBA. And so it just kept growing from there. So, initially I had formed an LLC myself. As it grew, I hired a lawyer to form a new LLC. Didn't do it correctly because I started realizing that this could be an issue. And luckily the new LLC was in place when I got that call from the customer whose product caught on fire. But that was like, when I was thinking back on it, I was like, thank God I'd gotten insurance in that LLC. So it kind of just grew from there. I mean, Amazon is one of those things, you'll either have a zero or a hero. Like you'll either break it and it's going to turn awesome, or it's going to just kind of float by, and maybe you'll get some sales here and there, maybe you won't. It just like, it really depends. And of course I was back in the stone ages of Amazon where it was, you could do anything. Suspensions were kind of unheard of back in the day. Like I remember violating a couple Amazon policies, and I got this was back when people in Seattle would call you, and they'd be like, "Hey Jeff, I need you to pull up a computer," and they'd tell you go to Seller Central, and you type in like the search term, and it'd pull up this detailed policy manual, and they'd be like, "Now tell me what you did wrong here based on what you just read." And I was like, well, obviously it had to do with case pack requirements. I remember this call because it was like I was trying to avoid the multi shipments to different warehouses, and I was like, "Oh, I'm selling cases of 72 now instead of cases of 12." And they're like, "So every case you've sent in the past was a case of 12, and all of a sudden now there's 72. What happened here?" I was like, "Well, obviously you caught me." So they're like, "Yeah, so just don't let this happen again." And of course now that's like you get a suspension email that doesn't probably tell you what you've done wrong. It just says, you're suspended, and please help us figure out why. 20 questions later, you figure out what you did wrong and you write a plan of action. So
it's like generic nowadays.
Exactly.
They don't get into details of here's what you did wrong.
Yeah.
So you started out in Amazon.
Started out in Amazon. As I grew, I got invited to Vendor Central. So that was pretty exciting. Like that was back in 2012 that I got a VC invite. And so the business is sort of, it kind of, some months VC outpaces Seller Central, some months it doesn't. It's really, Amazon's fluctuates quite a bit. They're bipolar, so they don't know what they want. But yeah, so I've gotten experience, it's kind of cool. I've gotten to experience, direct fulfillment, which is a Vendor Central version of Seller Fulfilled Prime. I've experienced, purchase orders through Vendor Central. I've experienced Seller Fulfilled Prime through Seller Central. Like anything that y'all are experiencing, I've probably gone through it myself through the years, and so it's been really exciting.
So was the whole idea to start on Amazon, you got mad or had a problem, and then you're like, I want to be an attorney? How did that whole, and I know this isn't right, so now why don't you tell the story?
So
how did the attorney thing come up?
The attorney thing has always been like, I wanted to be an attorney. It just seemed like a natural fit.
Okay.
Like my parents are always and grandparents were always big on like, you can't just go and get, just a bachelor's degree. You've got to get more. So I was like, well, I don't want to be a doctor, so lawyer seems like the next thing.
Next step.
So the attorney was there, and then as I was in law school and the business was growing is when I was like, I want to be a lawyer for Amazon sellers, because there really is no one out there that understands what they're going through. There are attorneys in the field that help Amazon sellers, but none of them have sold. They're just attorneys that see it as a profit center, and so they grow their business that way. There's also some to be out there that call themselves attorneys that are not even attorneys, and those are the most dangerous ones of all that you have to watch out for as sellers. So really doing your fact checking, because if someone is in a foreign country and they're calling themselves a lawyer, you kind of have to look and see why, because like there's one guy out there who's been disbarred by the State Bar of California, and he's not in the United States now, and he's a lawyer for Amazon sellers. And that's
that's perfect.
That's something to worry about. Know your experts. It all goes back to like do your due diligence before you fork over thousands of dollars to somebody.
That's perfect. So we were at dinner last night, and Jeff's like, please don't ask me this question. And I said, I'm asking this question because everybody else wants me to ask this question. Yes. So we all want to know, what category do you sell in? And since you probably won't answer that, maybe tell us about a product that you had trouble with, or that tell them which one to avoid, or besides the whole one on fire, because that's not fun.
I would not sell that one. I've always been big in the pet category. The way I got into it is that it was an area that I knew really well. Like I had connections there, and so it was like something I could try. So my word of advice is, don't pick categories because they look like they've got great numbers, or because they fit some profile of like small, light, under $10 and easily importable. Go for what you know. So like if you go to the gym all the time and you know what products are really good for working out, like look for products in that category, because you're going to be able to write your product details, descriptions a lot better. You'll know what images sell. Like I couldn't go out there and sell musical instruments because I don't know anything about music. So it'd be really like, it'd be foolish to go out there and try to be like, well, this harmonica fits all this metrics for what, this guru says you need to have. But I don't, I have no clue. Like they could ship me a box of harmonicas that don't play and it'd sound terrible either way I try to do it. And so it's not going to work. So
I think it's one of those things though that, everybody kind of has a little niche that they could go into, and it's not, and I don't think you're saying that you couldn't go into those other areas. It's one of those things that if you're going to start on Amazon, maybe start with an area that you have a little more, if not expertise, a little more understanding of that category. And then while you're running that category, you can look at other categories that you may want to go into and try to kind of develop your expertise in that area slowly, and not just jump in there and buy a bunch of inventory in a category you don't know and you're going to lose money.
Right.
So is that kind of summing up what you're saying?
Exactly. I mean, like I've dabbled in other categories beyond my own. Usually I end up like getting out of it because it's just it's not something I'm passionate about, like animals, where I'm passionate about these products. I know all the major players. My situation is a little bit different because all my products are made in the United States. So that's my claim to fame. Like I don't invest in anything that's not in the United States because I'm willing to pay a premium for products made in Texas or wherever they're made versus being made abroad. And that's just, it's very category specific. Obviously in the electronics category, that would never work. So, but like if you know electronics really well, that might be a category to look into. You have to be careful though, because some of these categories are super competitive, like and have a lot of black hat tactics. So if you see like an ultra competitive category that's got a lot of foreign sellers that are all competing in it, you might want to watch out, because unfortunately the reality of the game is that it's not only what you know, but it's who you know sometimes on Amazon. And so I've been really fortunate to not deal on my own listings with too many black hat tactics, because it just doesn't happen as frequently. It happens probably once a month versus where I know some people it's every day. Whereas, and that's really comes down to the category that you're in. So. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you gotta pick something that you definitely know at least a little bit about. Right. So you're going to get questions on it. Correct. Customers are going to email you and say like, this product I purchased from you doesn't work. And if you don't understand how it works yourself, how are you going to answer that question?
Yeah.
It also goes down to item not as described claims. You're going to get those because if you're just relying on your manufacturer to tell you a product sheet, like these are all the specific features, but you don't know what that means, then you're going to get an item not as described claimed or have your ASIN shut down because customers are reading the bullet points and you don't understand how to explain it better, and it's going to be a poor customer experience.
Yeah.
It also, that's another important thing too. A lot of people go to AliExpress and that they'll buy from Alibaba or AliExpress, they'll buy a product and they'll think that because someone else has used that same product image on a listing, that you can just go and list on that detail page. And I'm talking about like this microphone right here might be on Alibaba.
This came from Amazon.
Okay.
Yes.
So like it says Elvoxcon, and I might go and see this on Alibaba, and I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to slap my label on it, and then put it on that Elvoxcon label. You can't legally do that because you're putting your product on someone else's. Even if they stole the Alibaba image to put it on their listing, you can't still join that because now you're engaging in, trademark infringement, or if they don't have a trademark, you're at least going to have an issue with, item not as described or, incorrect products. So make sure you understand the rules of the game before you start playing in the game because it's Amazon's sandbox and they enforce their rules really harshly, and I didn't know. Well, it'll work about once, and then after that, they don't play around as much. So
it's like representation. I mean, if you're representing that this is my mic and I've got my name on it, somebody else comes along, even if it looks identical, just the fact that my product name is on there means I own that listing. Is that what we're saying?
Exactly. So listings are not generic. There's no such thing as a generic listing on Amazon. Even if you think it's generic, it's I've even seen people sell flour on Amazon, and you can't just be like, well, I sell flour too, and I'm going to throw this on this listing. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. So listings are product specific. So make sure, and that the same thing goes if you're doing retail arbitrage. A lot of times listings on Amazon, especially in the electronics, for instance, like an LG television, the model number for Amazon might be LG 42 HD AZ, which would mean it's a 42-inch HD TV for Amazon. And the model that's sold at Best Buy would be LG 42 HD BB, Best Buy. So retail arbitrage sellers, you can't go out there and buy that and then throw it onto the AZ listing.
It's not exactly the same.
Because it's not the same. Even though the box is identical and the features are exactly the same, because there's one element that's not the same, you'll end up getting a claim. And if you get an A to Z claim, the customer's going to get to keep that television for free. That's a hit to your bottom line. Right. So
yeah. Well, you brought up two good questions. So retail arbitrage, anybody in the room do retail arbitrage? No? Anybody not know what retail arbitrage is? Okay, so why don't we do have a couple people. So I'll give a real high level of what retail arbitrage is, because before I came to work at FeedbackWhiz, I was doing it and didn't even know that had a name for it. Yeah. So retail arbitrage actually is a couple levels to it, if I understood this correctly. The one you probably see on YouTube is people go out to, say, like a Best Buy or a Walmart. They find something that's being, let's say, discounted, and then they look on Amazon and find that it's being sold for a higher amount. They purchase it, they send it to FBA, and they sell it basically on Amazon. That's the basics of it. There's also another level of going to thrift stores and selling stuff, but usually with Amazon it has to be brand new, whereas a lot of people do retail arbitrage on eBay. Okay. So I have a good question for you then. Okay. Because I think you gave a great tip, and hopefully everybody took note of this. We were talking about these microphones, and we're talking about the name that's on them, right? Right. So if I went out and got a set of these microphones, and let's say I get them in from China, and they don't have my name on them, and let's say if I was able to print a clear sticker that had my name on it, would that still qualify to say this is my brand now of it?
It should. I mean, even if it didn't have a clear sticker with your name on it, if you create a new listing on Amazon, Amazon owns that detail page. That's the first big hurdle a lot of sellers don't understand, is that when you contribute the detail page content to Amazon, it's theirs forever. But but you can create a detail page and call it Jeff's microphone or Rob's microphones on Amazon. The key things to watch out for is use your own image. You don't want to take the image off Alibaba, even though they're probably professional photography.
Or a lot of times they're picked up off of other sites, I've noticed.
Correct. So
yeah. They're not even theirs.
Right. And there's crawlers now that, sellers can go through and, kick off everyone in their category that stole the image because, seller A has product photography done. This looks great. Seller A is photographer. And then seller B goes in there and steals the image and makes their own listing. And then the manufacturer goes in there and steals the image from seller B and puts it in Alibaba. And then seller C goes and steals the image off Alibaba and puts it on their listing. And then seller A goes in and says, haha, guess what? I'm going to knock off all of you people, and files a copyright infringement complaint and has those images taken down for everybody. So you have to, if you're doing private label, you've got to have your own images. You've also got to write your own text. So if you have a VA, I've personally never used one, so I don't have to.
Everybody know what a VA is? Virtual assistant?
So virtual assistant, you go to the Philippines. I think it's called Upwork is the big one that people go to.
Free Up, Upwork. Free Up, there's just look it up. Yeah. Google it.
So if you have a virtual assistant and you tell them, go out and make this amazing product description for me in bullet points. I've heard a lot of times that they just go and find your competitor's listing and they paraphrase, which maybe means that instead of saying like this microphone has great audio quality, they'll say like this microphone has good audio quality.
Silver versus gray.
Yeah,
something like that.
So, and that still could be considered copyright infringement. So really make your own, do your own work, because Nike's not going to go out there and copy Under Armour and steal their images and just change them slightly. I mean, if you're running a real business, you've got to treat it like a real business. And that means fact checking everything that's being done, and especially your claims that you're making on your labels. If you're in the nutritional supplements space, we see this all the time. Like, you can't just put on there like gives you amazing, benefits XYZ, cures cancer. Like, you can't say stuff like that because the laws of the United States still apply. The FDA has strict label requirements for health supplements, and they'll send you a C&D letter, and people like to send out C&Ds and sellers ignore them or whatever happens. When the FDA sends you a C&D, you better listen to it, because if you ignore that cease and desist letter, fine and penalties is coming next. So it's we see that somewhat regularly with the clients that we work with, that the FDA trolls Amazon, and they'll every once in a while they'll go on a little trolling spree, and they'll fire off just hundreds of letters to these companies. And Amazon turns over your information right away when the government comes asking for it. So you can have a Wyoming LLC and think that you've hidden yourself pretty well, or whatever LLC you think you're hiding behind. But when the FDA comes to Amazon, or the state of California comes to Amazon and says, tell us who this is, they'll hand over everything about your account to them so that they can figure out your home address, your purchase history from your, they know who you are. It's not hard to figure out. So if we're starting a business, the Jeff and Rob LLC, we're going to go on Alibaba, get some mics. Okay. We're the Jeff and Rob mics. Yes. We're going to put a label on them, make sure that they're ours, or have them screen printed. Yes. We're going to do our own images, make our own descriptions and titles, and sell on Amazon and make $1 million. There you go. That's the end. Okay, so what about, let's talk about some tools. Do you use any tools or software or anything to help sellers sell on Amazon or find products? Any one of those? So I don't use any of the product research tools myself. Oh, man. That's right. We got a demo set up for them on Monday. So, but I do use feedback software. I'm in the process of switching to FeedbackWhiz because mine is not powerful enough, and so I'm excited to switch to theirs now that I've seen it. It's as far as like I do have. How do you find new products then? Like, what's your strategy for finding a new product to sell on Amazon? So for me, selling on Amazon, it really comes down to working with manufacturers at this point. Okay. And so within my space, we work with them, and so we take an integrated approach for brand management. So we reach out to them, we see if they've been selling on Amazon. If they are not selling or they don't understand it, then we're able to offer them a complete solution where I show them, like, we'll create your listings for you, and then our law firm does all the brand management legal aspects, so removing hijackers, removing unauthorized sellers, and so that really gets in there for the brands. So our typical brand that we work with is north of 8 figures. And
oh, wow.
Pretty much 8, 9, 10-figure brands. And that's what we're kind of, our target market is now.
So, I mean, people could build up to that, right? I mean, that's something that they can get going on Amazon after they get their LLC corporation and work up to something like that.
No, for the sellers that we work with, we definitely work with sellers across the spectrum. So sellers that are just starting up, that are, kitchen table enterprises, all the way to like people that are in the $1 million sellers group. So we work with everyone across the spectrum.
Yeah.
It's just for like finding products, like I'm not doing like actively involved in doing like
researching products.
Researching and launching my own versions of products this day and age, because it just doesn't fit with the.
So you haven't been over to China and into like 100 factories like I did back in the day?
I've been to China a couple times, but not for product purposes, not for researching products. So because most of our manufacturers that we work with either make products in the United States or in France, and it's just the nature of where they find their manufacturing centers.
What about any stories or things that have happened with your manufacturer that, issues you've run into, or maybe some tips that you could give on dealing with manufacturers?
Have a contingency plan. One of our manufacturers was using a factory here in the United States, and the person who owned the factory died unexpectedly of a heart attack, and they didn't have a contingency plan for where to go. So that was a supply chain disruption that was finally just resolved, and it's been interesting because it was a
plan B. Have a factory B or manufacturer B.
Exactly. So have multiple sources. If you are sourcing abroad, a lot of issues that I've seen with sellers facing hijackers stem from the fact that they'll go to one manufacturer and they'll say, oh, make this microphone for me. And that manufacturer is going to make the microphone, they're going to make the packaging, they're going to give a complete product. The problem with that is that now the manufacturer knows what your ASIN is. They know because they're putting the stickers on for you and they're shipping it direct to Amazon, and they know all the components. So some of these factories will actually overrun the batches, and so like you tell them to make me 1,000 microphones, and the manufacturer makes 1,500 with the same lot number, and they ship 500 now to Amazon under their own Amazon seller account and compete with you for the buy box. Except you paid the manufacturer $2 per microphone, and their cost basis is 50 cents per microphone. Yep. And now you're competing for the buy box.
You just paid for their inventory.
Right. So a lot of there's some strategy that goes into that. Maybe you want this microphone to be made by manufacturer A, and then you're going to pair it with a receiver, and you're going to have the receiver made by manufacturer B. Of course, you got to make for interoperability. Yeah. But you would have two different manufacturers, and then both of them are going to ship them to a prep center that you've gone and verified in the United States. Yeah. And so that prep center is going to, you're going to receive them in the prep center, and then maybe you'll have your packaging made at manufacturer C, who's also going to ship to the prep center, and then you're going to combine all of those and have the prep center ship it to Amazon. I'm fortunate we've got a decent amount of real estate, so if I receive inventory, I can, we receive it ourselves. I don't use a prep center, but I know here in California, space is a premium, so probably prep centers is more cost effective than renting warehouse space. Yeah.
So Jeff and Rob microphones have been knocked off now by the manufacturer who made them. So if we do get them, or when we get them, what about like launch strategy? Do you have any strategy or suggestions when we go to actually launch this, or some tips on trying to get that on Amazon ranking high?
Talk to somebody that knows more about this than I do. Look for the people out there that are willing to admit when they don't know something. So launch strategy for me is it's never been as important. Sure. Because the products that I represent they already have a following. Okay. So it's just, we're creating listings on Amazon. We're incorporating some of the traditional elements of trying to get reviews, and that's where the review software comes in handy. But we don't have. I've never used like a viral launch or any of these launch services. Sure. Because quite frankly, rankings for our products don't matter. Yeah. As much as just them showing up when somebody's searching for that product because they've already purchased it at a traditional bricks and mortar retailer. So that's
Yeah. How about this then? So we get you on FeedbackWhiz. Yeah. And you set up our new tool that just came out a week ago, our hijacking alert.
Okay.
So the Jeff and Rob microphones just got an alert that somebody jumped on our listings.
Yeah.
I'm going to get mad and stomp my feet and call my lawyer.
That's a good place to start. Because the fact
Why don't you tell us what you should do?
Yeah,
What's the right process?
You get mad.
Maybe not stomp your feet. Don't put your hand through the wall or something.
But you definitely want to reach out to your lawyer first, because they're the ones that can advise you what your legal rights are. Because hijacking typically is just a fancy term that's been invented in the Amazon world for trademark infringement or copyright infringement or some form of intellectual property infringement. So Amazon gurus like to create fancy terms like hijacking because it steers you away from the real experts. So you can now have a consultant out there who's saying that they help you solve your hijacking problem and pay me, $1,500 to solve your hijacking problem. So I have a hijacking solution. When in the reality, you should have gone to an intellectual property lawyer who would legally solve your intellectual property infringement problem. So, so the lawyer is going to look at whether you have a trademark, whether the trademark covers your categories that you're covering. Because, for instance, to get on brand registry, some people will go out and get a trademark in Mexico or Germany or the United Kingdom, and that lets you have enhanced brand content. But you have no legal rights in the United States when somebody jumps on your listing. So the lawyer's going to look at that first. If they determine that you've got rights that are being violated, they're going to do more research into it. They're going to prepare a proper cease and desist letter that's custom to your situation. So, like when I prepare a C&D for a client, it's got case law where it talks to cases that are at issue. It's got their specific trademarks or intellectual property that's being infringed. We're going to list all these things, and it's going to be in a readable format, but also a lawyer drafted format, and it shows. So when people receive our cease and desist letters, they usually, they take notice and they act upon them. And if they don't act upon the first one, we can send multiple, and we don't usually send them through buyer-seller messaging because it's not effective. If I just get if you get a cease and desist letter through buyer-seller messaging, there's no teeth behind it. So ours show up by UPS because we do the research to make sure that the trademarks are in place and to uncover the seller's real identity, and we'll send it to their home and we'll send it to their work address if we have it. I mean, we've got special tools in the legal world that, the amount of data that are on people out there is quite astonishing. I mean, when we're looking somebody up, we're looking through, PG&E records, we're looking through Equifax, through the California DMV. I mean, you name it, our software is going to search it, and that's how we're going to find somebody that's hijacked the listing.
So we need a disclaimer. Please don't try this at home.
Yeah,
please, don't try to go research this yourself.
You can try it yourself, but it doesn't work because if you don't have the...
But Jeff, my friend, found this free template, a C&D online.
I know.
And I should use that, right? Like I should just, when they get on my listing, I'll just send that to them. Shouldn't I do that?
You could certainly try, but it's probably not going to be effective.
The answer is no, right? Get a hold of Jeff.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Jeff was telling some great stories last night. Yeah, quick. And just so you're basically asking, the question was asked, if somebody jumps on your listing or hijacks your listing and they're not in the United States, it could be even the manufacturer who took over our microphone and made extra, and they jumped on our listing for some reason. How do you address something where they're not in the United States?
Right. So that situation is trickier. It comes down to, like, our tool luckily is not specific just to the U.S. jurisdiction. So we're still going to do our research and see if we can locate, an email address or something. We're probably not going to ship it by UPS to them in China because it's not as effective. We really, it depends on the situation. I mean, we might, in that case, depends on the infringement as well. So if there's clear evidence of trademark infringement, that's when we start looking out at Amazon tools for reporting trademark infringement. It's the main issue that pops up is when sellers just willy-nilly use the Amazon report infringement tool, and they think like, oh, well, this person just popped up, they have to be fake, I'm going to go ahead and report it as fake. And if you're reporting, if you make too many reports through the brand registry infringement tool, Amazon's going to stop responding to those reports, and you'll start getting this very generic email back that says, thank you for your email, but we cannot accept your complaint because Amazon doesn't enforce exclusive distribution contracts. Please, use the legal system to figure this out on your own. Crying wolf too many times. Exactly. Yeah. So it's really fact specific. I mean, in the case of someone from China, if we can legitimately figure out that they're infringing and that means, you know, test buys and everything else, then we'll report it through the proper channels with Amazon to deal with it. So it's case specific.
Yeah. So Jeff, why don't you go over maybe a little bit of what does your law firm handle for Amazon? Like we talked about hijacking. What other things that you guys could help with?
Tax, like sales tax and income tax compliance, is a big issue because.
Let me. So probably one of the questions we should ask is obviously California. Your firm handle California. What other states does your firm handle?
So any of the issues that are like intellectual property, for instance, is a national concept. So that's trademark law is the Lanham Act. So that's the United States. So we can handle that in all 50 states. If it's a state law issue, then we can handle specific state law issues in California, Florida, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Illinois. And the list keeps growing because we're adding more lawyers pretty much all the time. So
Jeff's taking his bar in July for California.
Yeah.
So
we have a lawyer already out here in California, but I'm taking the California bar in July because apparently I like torture too much. So, but realistically, the reason why is because I think that the next wave of compliance for Amazon sellers is going to be Proposition 65.
Why don't you explain that prop a little bit?
So Proposition 65 in California is the regulation which is the reason why in California all these buildings have these giant signs that say, you know, this building contains X chemical that's known to cause birth defects and cancer to the state of California. It's not just a buildings thing; it's a products thing too. So if you're selling products to California consumers, they have to comply with Proposition 65. And so I think the next wave of compliance is going to be the products that have harmful chemicals that are on that California Prop 65 list that don't disclose it and don't have the appropriate symbols, which I think is a 2019 update to Prop 65, is that you have to have special warning symbols that are like little triangles and stuff.
Yeah.
And so if you're selling a product that requires Proposition 65 compliance, it's a real deal. There's actually a lawyer that I've run across that I don't know him personally. I just know of him. He actually is teamed up with a California resident. He basically takes they figure out which products are selling well on Amazon, and they order them. And so they specifically love to target the nutritional supplement space. And we're talking about like he'll order $1,000 worth of products at a time and get just gigantic boxes from Amazon, and then he sends them to a lab in Sacramento who tests every single one of these products to see if one of the Prop 65 ingredients shows up. And if it's on there, he issues a demand letter for $100,000 and then sues you, because Prop 65 is it's a private enforcement statute with a public enforcement element. So if a lawyer starts the case, it's the people of the state of California versus manufacturer and Amazon. And if the lawyer starts the case and California DOJ likes what they've done so far, they'll pick it up and then pay the lawyer his cut of whatever's collected. Wow. So this guy is now actively targeting Amazon sellers because guess what? You're businesses and you have to comply with the law.
Yeah. And
it's, you know, that I think is the next wave of compliance to hit the space.
Doesn't that make you want to move out to California?
I don't know. I think California causes
cancer. You brought up So you brought up a good point, actually. And anybody in here selling on eBay also? And not to get a little off topic because I know this is more Amazon. So I actually do occasionally sell stuff on eBay. And actually, the Prop 65 window just popped up recently.
Really?
Yes. And there's a box in there now you have to fill in if it's Prop 65. Of course, I don't know if it is or not because a lot of stuff I'm selling is used or my own personal stuff, right? But I actually noticed it about a couple weeks ago.
Really?
It's
on Vendor Central now. There's a Prop 65 because now it's got all the symbols that you can choose from, and it's a whole tab that's Prop 65 compliance in Vendor Central when you're launching products. So I think Amazon is taking notice because it's the retailer that can get sued, and then also the manufacturer and pretty much anyone in the supply chain. And so Amazon doesn't want to be sued under Prop 65 because they have deep pockets and they have a lot to lose from it. So
one thing I learned from talking to Jeff last night at dinner is you have to be responsible for your own business. You can't just start selling something and be like, I didn't know that, and then all of a sudden you're being sued. So it's up to you to go out there, find out this information, or have an attorney who could guide you on it, to know some of these little pitfalls you have to watch out for when you're starting a business and selling.
Exactly.
So Jeff's on my speed dial now. So
yeah, I mean, anything like when you're starting a business, you have to think there's intellectual property risks. Like they're basically landmines that you can run across. There's intellectual property landmines. So, are you infringing on someone's trademark or on their patent? I didn't know that somebody had a patent is not a defense to the fact that there's, that patents exist. Like, I don't know, I don't see any in the audience right now, but how many of y'all have heard of Blender Bottle? Okay, so Blender Bottle has a few people. So Blender Bottle is like a pretty cool bottle that you put protein powder in, and it's got a little ball that you, like when you put water in the protein powder, you shake it up and it mixes it for you. If you go to China, and like when I was there in October, I saw a ton of them, they'll sell you blender bottles, and they call them mixer bottles. And you can get your own blender bottle made with your logo on it. Except here's a problem. Blender Bottle has like 17 patents in the United States on this bottle, but ranging from utility patents for the mixing mechanism to design patents for the lid. And most of these Chinese blender bottles are exact knockoffs of the regular blender bottle. And if you ask the manufacturer at the trade show booth if you can sell this in the United States, the answer is going to be, of course you can. If you import that product into the United States, it's either going to be seized at customs because Blender Bottle has registered all of their intellectual property through the Customs and Border Protection registration program. So it's either going to be seized by customs, or in the rare event that it makes it to Amazon, they're going to take it down for patent infringement. And so I know of a seller who was trying to sell these, in his case, he wasn't selling blender bottles. He was selling some sort of like scotch bottle that you could mix scotch with. And there was a company out there that was like one of the alcohol companies that had a patent for frozen ice balls. And so he was trying to sell this like bottle that had a frozen ice ball in it. And now this seller has like 2,000 frozen ice balls in his basement. And he's like, yeah, I give them out as Christmas presents. I just can't get anyone to take them at this point because you can't sell them. And so, and people even will be like, oh, I got a notice of infringement. This company, Blender Bottle, sent me, a cease and desist letter. So I can sell it on, eBay, right? No, you can't. You're stuck with it. And that's where, before you start selling a product, you've got to do your due diligence. Check for trademarks, check for patents, check for copyrights, all these.
Before you invest all that money,
right? Because the last thing you want to do is buy, 10,000 blender bottles and be stuck with that in your basement because you didn't do your due diligence.
You're absolutely right. I've been to a lot of trade shows in China, and we'd go over there and we'd find, maybe 40, 50 products and good pricing, and of course they all want to sell it to you. And then you get back and you start really researching, okay, can I sell this? And man, some of the things I found trademarks on, I was like, you got to be kidding me. I can't believe somebody trademarked that, or I can't believe that trademark let them trademark that. Because it was almost like a very generic, general item. But it's just one of those things that you just got to, Velcro.
Oh, yeah.
Don't call it, or we're getting in trouble. I'll cut it out of the tape because we're getting in trouble calling it Velcro. So, hook and loop.
Yes, it's a hook and loop closure for if you're selling an item that contains a closing device that's made of hook and loop, unless you license Velcro from the Velcro company, or 3M, I guess is who it is.
I think it's 3M now.
So that's things to watch out for. Seller support. They usually don't know what they're talking about. So I've seen emails from sellers to seller support. One of them was launching a line of like running gear, and they were going to call it Nike, Nikey, and they emailed seller support and they said, can I sell this on Amazon? Because I see that Nike is brand registered and restricted. And the seller support says, greetings from seller support. This is so and so. I'm happy to inform you that you can sell it on Amazon. And yeah, that's not going to work. Like, just because they, seller support told me so is not a defense, even to seller performance. Like, if you're violating Amazon policy and there's a question there.
No, we'll get Q&A in just a couple minutes.
Like, if you're violating Amazon policy and you have an email from seller support saying it's okay, and you try to present that to seller performance, they're usually not going to take it because it's not what they say has no precedent at seller support.
Yeah.
It's just, you're talking to the lowest people that answer emails in Amazon. And so
you got to be careful where you're getting the information from. And even though it's from Amazon, you got to be careful, like re-verify it yourself.
Exactly. Check the terms of service, check the seller university pages. You've got really good resources at Amazon that tell you everything you need to know about selling for the most part and how to do it within terms of service. Make sure you familiarize yourself with that first,
Yeah.
Same thing goes like for courses, know who your course provider is. Just because somebody is really, has great marketing doesn't mean they know Amazon. So, there's course providers all over the country, and some of them have never even sold on Amazon, or maybe they've sold like $100,000 worth of stuff on Amazon in their history, but they're great at marketing and they're great at YouTube. And so they've got, they've made money that way.
Yeah, for sure. I'm great at marketing and YouTube, but I don't have a Lamborghini out back. So, but yeah, that's awesome. So how about a big round of applause for Jeff?
Yeah.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and for more information, please visit FeedbackWhiz.com.